the intro? All right.
I definitely have the intro because welcome everyone to the .NET MAUI podcast. We haven't done this in so long. We have no idea what we're doing.
It's been over a year.
It's been a whole release of .NET 8 and now .NET 9. I'm one of your hosts, James Monson, and with you, as always, Mr. Matt Sokup and David Orna. How's it going, gentlemen?
Hello, hello. Welcome to July 2024.
Yeah, here we are. It's, I don't know. I'm glad to be back. See, you can feel the awkwardness of us not knowing what to do anymore. We had hit our stride. We were doing so well, and now we're talking over each other and having the awkward pauses.
I feel like it was just like one podcast. It was like, oh, I'm going to be traveling. Somebody else is going to be traveling. And then suddenly it's a year later. And we're like, oh, but so much has happened. I mean, there's certainly plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we get us together. Now, back in the day, when we would do this podcast, Matt, who is fantastic, would put together like show notes, and we put little names of like who's talking on what. We would never talk over each other. It was fantastic. Now, like Matt and David actually have to like look at who's talking where and make sure that like we pause, we do a thing. But I'll run this through some like magical Adobe podcast thing. It's going to sound amazing at the end of the day. But yeah, it is July. I can't believe it is 100 bajillion degrees here in the Pacific Northwest. It is fantastic. And we had Microsoft Build, and one of the largest developer events of the year. And there was some exciting news in and around .NET MAUI and everything that sort of happened. You want to break down the latest and greatest, David, of what happened?
Yeah, sure. So I think the most exciting news from this last build was I was not there. I mean, so that's the first time that's happened since I joined Microsoft in like, was it 2016, 2017, sometime back then. But we just after build, is a little belated, but we shipped a new VS Code extension GA for .NET MAUI. So we can talk a little bit more about what that entails and the features and kind of the roadmap of that. We did have a wonderful MAUI session that was recorded, and you can go check that out on YouTube. Maddie and I put that together and talked about just all the latest updates. Lots of momentum in the community. We see a ton of like 160, 170% more apps in the Google Play Store, which is just one segment of people using .NET MAUI. That's mostly consumer, although there are some business, enterprise, B2B type stuff in the Play Store as well. We don't have the same visibility into the Apple Store, so we don't quite know who's using MAUI there, but a lot of it's the same because it's a cross-platform technology, right? So,
yeah.
So we got a lot of great things going on there. I would say probably the hottest news, because Beth Massey was working the booth and Maddie was there in person on the floor running the TikTok for a day and a half or whatever she did, interviewing people. But the feedback that we heard was people are building apps, which is like obvious, but also exciting. Yeah. They were coming by the booth, and when they wanted to talk about .NET, they were talking about building mobile apps, desktop apps, hybrid apps. And the hybrid session ended up being that Beth Massey gave. It was like a 15-minute demo session. Ended up being the most watched, attended of its kind at the whole conference. So that was really cool to hear. I'm sure Beth did an amazing job. I didn't get to see it because I wasn't there. But I think it is. I don't know if it's recorded, so I can't promise that. But those are kind of the highlights from MAUI. And then, of course, we've had just tons of releases, .NET 8 servicing releases every month, NuGets as well as in Visual Studio. And the train for .NET 9 has been really exciting. While .NET 8 has been mostly, if not exclusively, bug fixes and memory leak fixes and performance improvements, the .NET 9 stuff has introduced Android asset packs, has introduced new native AOT for the iOS platform, which includes a lot of trimming improvements in the core MAUI SDK. If you were a Xamarin developer for a long time or early .NET MAUI developer, you are probably aware that MAUI and Xamarin was not fully AOT compatible. You couldn't trim the whole thing. And so now MAUI is, with the help of our runtime team engineers that have been plugging away at the trimmability of everything. And that goes all the way down into the Android and iOS SDKs. It's a deep cleaning kind of a situation, which, what is the end result of that? Your apps are faster and smaller when you're using the AOT functionality that it comes along with. The native AOT stuff on the iOS side is, you can basically think of the old mono AOT or the previous generation mono AOT, which everybody's using today, is great, but this is a whole re-envisioning of it and re-implementation of it. And so apps are like half the size, much faster, which is extremely exciting on iOS. I would love to see that come to Android as well, which is really where it's perhaps more needed. But in order to take the one caution, as you may know, is that in order to take full advantage of native AOT and .NET 9, you need to make sure that absolutely everything is trimmable in your application. And so you will quickly find when you try to use it that the output will tell you such and such API is not trimmable, such and such library is not compatible. And so it's not something you can just use part of. You kind of have to do the whole thing. So there is quite a bit of work on developers' parts to take advantage of it, but the upside, the advantage is significant. So excited to see a lot of the Net 9 stuff starting to roll out. And I know we've got a preview that we're cooking up right now again. And so it's exciting stuff.
Well, I do want to get back to some of the service releases and VS Code stuff, but before that, Matt, how was your build?
My build was actually great. I was there because I live like a mile away from it, so I did not get
you're
out
better
of it
than
like
us. We get it. Okay.
Worthy.
I took public transportation there and back, so my
water taxi?
My water taxi, yep. Anyways, so what we did while we were there, my team, and with the help of some great helps from the product team, was run a AI session. My joke that I was thinking of for here is I've been doing a lot of MAUI except without the M and the U. Tons of AI work. But we ran an AI session
without MAUI. That's for sure.
That's right. So we ran an AI session. When I say session, it's really a lab, hands-on lab where people are able to run through from A to C and actually adding in AI to the eShop application. So we took a brownfield app and put AI into it. And so that's what I think a lot of people are going to end up doing is you're not creating a brand new app to put AI in, you're going to be putting it into an existing one. So that's what we showed. And I'll put it in the show notes because that workshop is available for everybody. And it's a quick one, like I said, 45 minutes. And the other one was on .NET Aspire. Same deal, 45 minutes, except this was brand new because we wanted just to kind of showcase all the goodness of .NET Aspire from the get-go and kind of reduce the cognitive load of kind of dealing with an existing app and just show the brand new like service discovery and the components of using like Redis cache and all that other stuff to it. And Aspire, oh, I love it. So great. I mean, you can just say, you know what, I want to get this other web service, call it, buy it a name, and it's there, and you just use it. And it's, I don't know, the dashboard. Have you all seen the dashboard of .NET Aspire?
Sure.
Was using it to debug and during the lab. And it's just so amazing. So anyways, that's what I've been doing. A lot of web work.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah. Oh, I think what's cool, actually, apart from build, is that Scott Hanselman and Mark Rusinovich did a session on AI, but it was infusing applications, with AI, and they actually built a .NET MAUI application. They primarily demoed it all on Windows. It was a .NET MAUI application that they basically turned into using like local models running on their machine to investigate Hanselman's desktop and do a desktop cleanup and prioritize things and use semantic kernel for all this stuff. And what was neat about it to the .NET Aspire part of it is that the .NET Aspire dashboard can be run standalone. So if you have any application, including a MAUI application, you can pipe in open telemetry via gRPC and the exporter and get all of your logging and all of your metrics and tracing information from your .NET MAUI applications. And we'll put a link to that. It's on Mark Rusinovich's GitHub, but it's a whole application and shows it there. And I know the engineering team has done. I don't know if all of what they said publicly or shown. There's been some things sprinkled on YouTube here and here of random demos of and stand-ups as well of some deeper integration for Aspire, as you can imagine, into the MAUI ecosystem. Nothing to really talk about right now on the pod, but as it progresses, we'll definitely be sure to update you. But I agree. I loved Build. I love seeing MAUI sprinkle into different places, like in Hanselman and Racinovich's session, but also just the feedback and the vibe from people was like really, really good. Like I just really loved the keynotes. I said it on Merge Conflict plenty of times. I thought it was one of my favorite builds, even though I wasn't at it either, but it was one of my favorites. But we kind of made, my team kind of took the day off to actually watch stuff, because when we're there, and I'm sure Matt, you can say, it's like when you're there, and David, like when you're there, you don't get to see anything. Like you're probably stressed about your session, David, and you're like freaking out. And then we're running all over the place. Last year I was running the podcast booth. I didn't even see my team. You know what I mean? Like I was just all over the place. So actually sitting back and watching the online experience and taking it in was neat from my perspective. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a big energy boost, because customers that you don't talk to, and we seek out customers, developers to talk to regularly, right? I mean, like that's the lifeline of what we do as product owners. And but they come out of the woodwork at Build, those that you've never talked to, and walk up to you and tell you the amazing things they're building with the technology that you're, sweating over day in and day out. And it's just so cool. So I always leave those events feeling very energized. But like you said, yeah, it's hard to always watch them. So I did enjoy being here in my office and being able to just tap into the live stream and absorb it without any distractions. And I will say I was very proud of some of our leadership and the presentations that they gave. And I was like, man, I really like working at Microsoft. I like the people, and I like our mission. I felt very proud this build more than others.
I agree. I'm totally with you. I was really enthralled by it. So let us know what you think in the comments wherever you watch this on YouTube or you're on your podcast app, or just feel free to message us. Let us know how your build went, if you had any highlights and things like that. I do think one thing that's been fascinating is I've been working pretty close with a lot of the teams, including David, on the .NET 9 stuff. But every month, I think a big change that we talked about before was how .NET MAUI has these service releases that you mentioned, David, and it's been really fun to watch people upgrade. It's either seamless as far as you upgrade your .NET SDK, you get some of the newer bits, kind of like in the past, but you can also just assign a specific NuGet version and kind of be on the latest and greatest train. And then that is ensured that no matter what SDK you pull down, no matter what people on your team have bits installed, they're getting the latest and greatest. And in fact, talking about the eShop application that you were talking about, Matt, is the .NET MAUI version of the eShop application is fully updated. It uses all the API services, all the new authentication, uses gRPC for communication, and some of the services of eShop, which is really cool. And it uses a lot of the new features. And we were using all the new service releases as you were rolling them out. Big shout out to Michael Stonis, who did a lot of the updates on the application. I just reviewed stuff. And we also updated the ebook too. So the architecture guidance for enterprises all updated, new PDF out, version 2.0 on 8.0 and all the bits. So I think, David, one question I have for you is what can developers sort of anticipate for these releases in 8 and then 9 as it comes to like these NuGets? What is the team focusing on for those? And why should somebody opt into this new mechanism compared to what they're used to?
Great question. So the main focus, very simply right now, is collection view, layout, consistency, and memory leaks. So now you can lay those across the 4 platforms that we support, and some platforms are going to get higher prioritization than others given usage and given where we are in the evolution from Xamarin to .NET MAUI. Xamarin is now out of support. Some folks have not yet made that transition with all of their applications. And so we want to make sure that we're giving priority to completing those transitions, which means that when an issue comes in or there is an issue that's highly impacting an upgrade from Xamarin to .NET, we're more than likely going to put that higher up on our backlog. So from a topic standpoint, from a focus standpoint, those are the general areas. Now, We've got customers that are paying for support, and we've got, other things that will arise and, jump the queue, if you will. But those are the general guiding principles. Now, one of the things that the team has been working on is to create better visibility into when you're going to see stuff. Like, okay, when am I going to see this particular fix? If you're not seeing a milestone on an issue, then it has not risen to the level of being considered in sprint planning. Sprint planning happens on basically a monthly cadence, and we look at the backlog of issues, and we based on the priorities I just mentioned, as well as the paid customer angle, as well as the community engagement on an issue. We're looking to see, are you commenting on it? How many people are impacted by it? Does it have a regret? Does it have a workaround? And how hard is it to fix? Really, you can think of all of these things as how do you manage your own backlog for your own stuff? I mean, It's a lot of the same logic. It's pretty street smart kind of stuff. But as we do our sprint planning, we are now taking the approach of priority 0, priority 1, priority 2. How do we manage each sprint in terms of those things? You're gonna basically stop a release from going out if you can't get a P0 solved for that particular sprint. Priority 1s are the rest of the issues that are super important to get in, but you might ship without them. And then priority 2s and beyond are those that are going to be nice to have. So when you're looking at releases, look at those labels and look at the milestones in terms of what issues are going to be in. And we, of course, have project boards for all this sort of stuff. But every single day, we have a nightly feed, right, where it's building off of the main branch. And so you can put that feed into your NuGet config and pull from that. As a new release candidate for a service release is available, it will first appear on the nightly feed. And then once we go through our QA process, so the nightly feed, there's no QA, right? Well, it's automated QA. It's whatever tests are running on those releases that are automated. And then the next level beyond that is, okay, we're going to prepare something to ship to NuGet.org. And so what are the steps there? Well, we have scripted QA testing, manual tests, as well as assessments that get done by our QA staff and partners. So it's going to go through that process. And once they give it the green light, then it will go to NuGet.org. And so how do you adopt that from NuGet.org? You simply use your NuGet package manager, go find the latest package. It's at that point not going to be marked as a preview. It's going to be a GA release on NuGet.org, and you can add it to your project. That's going to add a package reference in your CS proj, just like any other NuGet package that you've included. And that will override the default .NET installed MAUI version, right?
Yeah.
So if you're running 8.0.300 .NET and you've got the workload installed for it, that probably included, let's say it included 8.0.60 of MAUI, but 8.0.70 is the latest service release. It's going to override that. And then, of course, you can always revert that. So there's a step beyond that. Once that release has been out in the wild for a bit on NuGet.org, be it a week, be it 2 weeks, and nobody's flipped out and said that we just burned their app to the ground, then it gets promoted into Visual Studio releases, and Visual Studio runs its releases on its own cadence. And so the process there is that the actual .NET SDK runtime and MAUI workload gets inserted into a Visual Studio installer. And when you go check the box inside of Visual Studio, that's actually pulling those versions of things. So that's perhaps a longer answer than you wanted, but the exciting thing is that every release is getting tons of fixes. We're churning them out at a great pace. Do we want to work faster and have more people, et cetera? For sure. Like, come on, we're greedy. We love this stuff. But the feedback we're hearing is that I was just catching up on email today, and probably every single email from a customer was saying, your latest service releases are fixing critical issues in our projects, or impactful issues in our projects, and we're shipping our stuff to production. This is great. Keep it up. That sort of thing. But one other thing I wanted to highlight is that we've seen a wonderful uptick of community contributors in the MAUI repo. And so it's exciting to see that people are not only engaging, but able to, like contributing to open source, especially a project like MAUI, is not easy.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to see people being successful with it and putting in quality stuff that makes it through the whole PR process. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't.
Yeah.
And so pretty exciting momentum we've got going on right now.
Yeah, I like that because it does follow, like, to me, I always enjoyed the workload stuff, but it always felt like, it's kind of like back in our Xamarin iOS and Android days. It was just like, okay, the platform gets updated, things happen. When Xamarin Forms came along, and it was tied to NuGet, you could pick and choose, and you could tie your versions. It felt very much like, oh, this is how I use any library. And now we're kind of back to that, being able to ship that stuff over and over again. And it also helps fall in line with, for example, like the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, which, Gerald's been doing a great job doing videos on it on his channel, and the whole team, the community, and also some folks at Microsoft and other companies been working on as well. I just put out a brand new camera view and a bunch of other great stuff. But now they could actually more fine tune that and pin it to versions of NuGet as well. And what I like about it as someone that creates a lot of demos, but also workshops that we have out there, it means we get to kind of pin it as well. So I get to pin it, so I know what versions are going to work no matter what. And then if there is something I need to change, then I can upgrade and go from there. And so that's been really nice to see as well, which is great. So keep it coming, keep it going. I'm hearing the same thing on my side. I do want to get to another bullet point that you had, which is that Matt is by far the biggest Apple fan here, big Mac OS user, just absolutely loves it, can't live without it. Every other Windows device he's just chucked out the window, and he's like, I'm only Mac, and that's it.
I'm using Windows right now, but yeah,
exactly. I know. I think it's both Matt and I are on are you still on your Project Volterra?
Yeah,
I'm still on my Project Volterra. What do you have, Dave? What are you running right now? Surface laptop, MacBook Pro?
No, I'm talking to you on a Dell desktop thing.
I'm really wanting the new ARM Snapdragon thingy that's coming, the dev kit that's coming out. I want all the new the Copilot Plus PCs, but I'm gonna get that dev kit thing, like $900. So I just feel like I want all the little magical dev kits sitting here. But we all know that, like Xamarin Forms being retired, Visual Studio for Mac being retired, Matt, hands-on impression, Visual Studio Code for .NET MAUI, Mac, Windows, Linux. We know you're a big Linux fan.
Yep. It's been a long time coming. And I think it kind of, right? No, I mean, we've heard people talking about this, 20, we've just asking about it. Like, can we be
25 years
creating? Yep. Yeah, exactly. Can we create Xamarin apps with VS Code? And now you can create MAUI apps with VS Code. And I would say it's pretty easy to do as well. And it's just a nice experience to be able to do that. And we all know that VS Mac is no more. And so it's just a nice way to go in and be able to have this first party experience. And I'm a big fan of VS Code myself. I like them both, Visual Studio and VS Code. But yeah, my overall experience with it is, and I'm going to say it's not an in-depth experience because, AI, but it's it's a nice, I found it was a really nice, quick getting started, and it's a nice, lightweight way to go. If you don't want to have the full, it's big brother of Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned AI, and I know you're referring to your other responsibilities, but VS Code plus Copilot for me, it's just killer, man. It's amazing. So I know one of the other things we wanted to talk about was the MAUI UI July. So Matt Goldman put this together. It was originally, I think, a Stephen Davison thing, but it's like every day, potentially, of the month, somebody is putting out some MAUI related content to showcase cool things you can do. And this month has been stellar. We're now on the 8th day of the month, and I've seen at least 6, 7 blog posts and things. And it's just been great. So I did one, and it was a bunch of collection view or list view based bindable layout things. So I think I had 8 different examples
I think so. Yeah.
in the app, and those are just the ones I included. And I keep noodling on it. I'm ready to add a Blazor hybrid one once I figure out CSS. But yeah, the cool thing with it, Matt, was that it was basically me, VS Code on a Mac, and Copilot, and that was it. And it was, I enjoyed Hot Reload, which is new as of the GA release. It's of course all the IntelliSense and XAML that has been added. It's Copilot just kicking butt, and it's going back to the NuGet thing. I was flip-flopping between .NET 9 previews and .NET 8 service releases, both public as well as on the nightly feeds, and just bouncing around between them because, we're fixing things, right? So it's like, okay, well, I know this is fixed over here, so I'm going to go test it over there. And, oh no, what's happening over here? And of course, you want me as a product owner to be dog fooding. So congratulations, that's happening, which means that I'm also filing issues as I'm finding things in .NET 9, which is great because it's awesome trimming stuff that I just mentioned previously. But it's like, oh, why is my relative binding not working anymore? Stuff like that. And I'm adopting new releases of the community toolkit with some killer value converters and stuff like that in there that I didn't even know existed. Like, I'm finding stuff in the community toolkit that I'm just like, are you kidding me? So fast to build this stuff now. And I just had a great experience with it. So a couple of things, Matt, I don't know if you know this about the VS Code extension, because there are a couple of other .NET extensions out there, like Uno has some stuff. Maybe Avalonia has some stuff. I know that there's also the .NET Meteor extension. So one thing is that the C# dev kit / MAUI extension uses the core debugger and not the soft mono debugger. This is a change. And so you're going to get much better debug experience. You're going to get essentially the same that you would expect in Visual Studio. Whereas before it was the open source mono debugger, which was, needed for the mobile scenarios, right? Like, it was critical. Xamarin kind of pioneered that stuff. Kind of. I say kind of because I know there were other people involved, and I don't want to, everybody should get credit. I don't know everybody's names.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's got a different debugger. So I think that's key. And then also, of course, it's got the built-in hot reloads, the .NET hot reload, as well as the XAML hot reload. Both work. We got a new fire emoji. Who doesn't love another fire emoji in your editor? So there's some key core fundamental pieces in our extension that differentiate it from those other community-based extensions that I think makes the experience a bit more robust. But they get to innovate a little faster than we do. So I look forward to seeing what everybody else does.
So let me change the subject just a tad. First, David, you don't give yourself enough credit for UI design work. All your stuff is just great, and I've stolen so much of the stuff that you've written. So there's that. And second, though, I just want to call out that the team has recently added a MAUI front end to our C# AI search canonical example.
Oh, cool.
So there's that now, where you can see, and essentially what that search example does is lets you chat with your data. So like you can upload like your HR benefits plan and ask like, do I have vision? Can I get glasses or whatever? So there's a MAUI front end to that now.
Cool.
Yeah, super cool. So it's not just a web app. It is now a full-on mobile app too. So I will put a link to that too, so people can go see your mobile app doing the generative AI thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's fun in all these scenarios, right? We work on so many different projects, where we've always said it's like we're not just a mobile developer, a desktop developer with .NET. We're kind of doing everything with C# back and forth. I think for me, I'm on Windows most of the time, right? So Windows is my main driver. And it is nice. I pretty much let Visual Studio 2022 be the driver of all the install, right? The SDK, the workloads, all this stuff. And then that means I just open up VS Code and I just have the MAUI extension with the C# dev kit, and everything just works, right? It's just boom, here it is. It knows about all my emulators. It knows about my devices. It debug and do all the things, right? So it's a great experience if I'm on a Windows machine, bopping back and forth between those two. On the Mac side of things, I also have my M1 Mac as well. And, the experience obviously on VS Code is going to be very much the same. Now, I will say this. I know I didn't have to, but I did. I just reformatted my Mac because I wanted a pure install experience. And I did want to ask you, David, if you received feedback. I've gotten some questions because a lot of developers that maybe are transitioning right now into VS Code from Visual Studio for Mac on the Mac, they're going through sort of a, hey, this thing installed a bunch of stuff. Does this thing know about that stuff? And it pretty much does. But then I got into this area where I was like, okay, it's time to do the purge. And this was like a few weeks ago. I said, it's time to clean off this machine, get it to a state where Visual Studio for Mac is no longer there. Drag, drop, recycle bin, go. But just because you drag and drop from the recycle bin doesn't mean that about 5 billion other files aren't installed on your device, which, by the way, isn't just a Visual Studio for Mac thing. That is like every application ever type of thing. I even uninstalled Xcode, and then I went searching, and about 50 gigs later of deleting stuff, just because you drag and drop stuff. So I just said, hey, listen, everything's on OneDrive. Let me just blow away. And I want to do a video on clean install, all this stuff, because there's a lot of magic in there. But what's your recommendation, David? I'm sure it's not to be like James and just reset your machine, but what is that migration process for folks that are like, yeah, I'm moving over now 100% VS Code? Any tips, tricks, highlights from your side of things that you've seen?
Read the documentation. So yeah, I mean, I actually did the same exercise a little further back than you, but I reformatted the whole M1 and started literally from scratch and built it up with just VS Code. And yeah, you got to install a bunch of dependencies that you don't really know about. The documentation does give you some very helpful hints in terms of, okay, if you just run this .NET command with this special Android parameter, it will acquire for you the SDKs from Google that it needs. Actually, I think we use the Open SDK, Open JDK from Microsoft.
Yeah.
But it'll get the right versions and things like that. And of course, you need Xcode if you're going to do anything iOS or Mac related and things like that. There are several things there that if you go step by step through the documentation, you'll get it all. And I know that it works because when I tried it, it didn't work, and we filed issues and we fixed the documentation.
Nice.
Which it was as simple as a missing quote on a command line thing. It's like I didn't know I needed quotes. So those are the key things. Also, don't be shy. I mean, like if you need some visual way to manage your Android emulators, install Android Studio. It's free. Yeah, it puts a couple of gig on your machine. Everything does. But, if you're looking at any other cross-platform, multi-platform tool, you're going to end up installing it anyway. Like, I mean, it's kind of part and parcel. In the past, Visual Studio for Mac would have just tried to do everything for you, so you never had to leave the Visual Studio ecosystem. And that's not the world that VS Code lives in. So get comfortable with command line stuff. Get comfortable with using Xcode if you have to use Xcode, Android Studio if you have to use Android Studio. But you will be successful as long as you just follow the docs.
Is that your recommendation? Is obviously we need Xcode installed because you always need Xcode installed. But on the Android side, is that your recommendation? Like I'm about to do this weekend, so is your recommendation? I know I could follow the docs, but like, do you think like, hey, if I'm recommending it, like, hey, yeah, you can go through this, but would you just say, hey, just install Android Studio?
I would just install Android Studio because you're gonna there's stuff there you're gonna want to have.
Okay.
There's the AVD manager and Android
virtual
device manager. But I stumbled on that because somebody else used AVD the other day and it didn't mean Android virtual device, and I was like, what are you talking about? You're going to want that. You're going to want maybe some of the profiling tools. You're going to probably want the SDK manager that's included so you can visually see what's available. And it does put things in a standard location so you don't really have to worry about it. Like if you go trying to acquire things through package managers like Homebrew and stuff like that, unless you absolutely know that's going to be a path that's successful for you, just stick with the the first party tool from Google, which is the Android Studio.
No, it makes some sense. I mean, like we've done with Xcode forever. It's always been installed, managed. It gets all the simulators, gets all the stuff.
Don't install Xcode through the App Store.
No, that's my jam. Not the App Store.
No.
That's what I do.
That's a good way to get your machine into a bad state because it auto updates when you don't think it's going to auto update. And so go get the Xcodes app or download directly from the developer.apple.com. Just don't do the Apple App Store.
There you go. Pro tips from David Orr. Now, last question I have for you too on this is, both Matt and I are rocking ARM devices. ARM's all the rage. On our M1s, there are actually M1 ARM emulators. And I've gotten a lot of questions recently on the Windows side of things. If Google has shipped out, if people are coming to me and they're like, "Hey, James, where's my Android emulator for ARM devices?" I technically, back in the day, and still, like, Android actual devices are just ARM devices, right? And the emulators, they're emulators, not simulators, right? Like on iOS and the iPhone simulators are simulators, so they're using the machine, where the Android emulators are the emulators, right? And we moved to x86 and the Hyper-V stuff, they got super duper fast, which was great. I used WSA for a long time, but there's nothing like having a good old Android emulator up and running. On the ARM devices, have you heard anything or recommendations? It can also just be a no, besides go to Google's issue tracker and +1 it, because I've seen a lot of every Android developer. We're talking Flutter developers, React Native developers, Android developers on that. Is that the go-to right now for ARM
I think
Windows?
so. I'm not aware of one that is available for Windows yet, but I do think that the subsystem for Android is still a good option, right?
Yeah. It's there while it's there,
Yeah. So love it while you can.
Yeah. Or additionally, as I've always recommended, at least have about 18 different Android devices spattered around your desk.
Yeah.
And if you don't have one just plugged, I use Visor still to reflect and just get it up. And there's all sorts of stuff. So
gotta have a device for sure.
Gots to. It's my international phone, so I'm an iPhone user now. But I use a service called Airolo, which lets you do international eSIMs, which is really convenient when you travel, because I'm on good old Mint Mobile, $15 a month, and I'll get that international. So although now they actually have pretty good international service, but I'll tell you, for like $7, you can get like so many gigs of data on the eSIM stuff now. It's so good. Anyways, all right. So build stuff, check. New service releases, check. .NET 9 goodness, check. VS Code goodness. UI July goodness. MAUI toolkit update. Anything else from either of you top of mind, or do we go to Matt for the mystery topic that I have in mind? Though we do, I think we do.
I think you should. Right. I think we've hogged enough time over here on my side.
All right, Matt, what is your AI pick of the pod?
Oh, the AI pick of the pod.
This can be anything.
I already told you about the search example, right?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Mm-hmm.
I already told you about our AI workshop.
Yep.
Could have used that. But you know what? I'm going to talk about the .NET AI documentation. We used to not have any .NET AI docs, period. And when we did, you know what they had in it? David? James? Python.
Oh,
Python.
And the .NET docs?
And the .NET docs, right? It was nobody's fault. We had to have something. I don't know. Anyways, they don't anymore. Now it's a full-fledged set of docs. It's actually really, really great. A lot of people worked on it, they're coming along. They keep on evolving, and anything that you would ever want to know about AI is almost there. Not everything, because the field moves so quickly, but definitely for getting started, there's a ton of quick starts. You can AZD up everything using the Azure Developer CLI and deploy your whole infrastructure, play around with it, then AZD down, and it wipes it all out for you too. So yeah, that's my pick of the pod for Azure AI, or just AI stuff, is the .NET docs for it. Yeah, learn all about AI using our favorite platform, .NET. Nice. And our favorite language, C#, because that's all we have. No F, no VB.
Well, now you'll be prepared every podcast for your AI pick of the pod. Really appreciate it. Well, gentlemen, we are back. We are going to keep this podcast going. We're not going to wait a whole another year, we promise. Let us know what topics, what guests you want to have on the pod. We'll make it happen. Just reach out to us wherever we're at on the internet. You'll find us. You'll know where we're at. But that's going to do it for this month's .NET MAUI podcast. So until next time, thanks for watching and listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.